Throughout my time in the U.S. military, I was always kind of bothered by this talk around um, the idea that our the actions of our service members abroad are securing our freedoms here at home. Um, and I never believed that was true while I was in the service. Something you just kind of like wave off and then carry on with your day. Um, And, especially at the time, in the like sort of mid 2000s, that was the height of propaganda. And when we, in the, and we were just knee deep in the sort of the Patriot Act and, the curtailing of our civil liberties that resulted from our reaction to the 9/11 attacks. So this idea that our civil liberties are somehow under assault. It's like it's our civil liberties are under assault, but they're under assault from our government. Um, Not like think of what what that even means, to say that our troops are protecting our freedoms. Like what? Nobody's going to steal like the rights you have, but politicians, you know. Uh, but the president and Congress, like there's not Al Qaeda's not going to do that. They don't they can't change our law system. It's just ridiculous on its face, but it's like we were made to just accept this because criticizing it was a major cultural taboo at the time, still is. Although it's easier to talk about now, I think, in public, because even conservatives are quite disillusioned with all of this. Think about any war in our history that was necessary to our like continued existence um, as a free country, whatever that means or whatever it meant at the time, and like there's basically like the Civil War and nothing in the 20th century. Like in the 20th century, it was all just we were just working on our colonial projects, and then we helped we swooped in and helped win World War II, which Nazi Germany was doomed anyway, because they were run by fanatical, meth-addled fascists who, despite having a lot of scientific and like strategic talent in their employ, at the end of the day, they're fascists and they don't really live in a reality, and they don't really live in the reality that winning a world war, sort of demands. So I mean, Nazi Germany was going to lose whether we joined the war or not. The difference is like we were able to swoop in and become the global hegemon because of that, and also absorb a lot of Nazi talent and help top ranking Nazis escape to the United States, to neighboring countries, many of whom became actual NASA scientists and CIA agents, uh, infamously to South America, and to continue to fund fascist terrorism across the world and in Europe and whatnot for the years after World War II. So the legacy of our military is not good. And so this is for the individual, and I know from experience, for the individual, the service member who's serving in that, and it gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them a very, very structured life. You always know what is expected of you because it's written in a book that you have, within arm's reach usually. Um, Everything you need to know about what you're doing in the moment is written down, and there's this sort of very, very successful kind of esprit de corps and pride in what you're doing, and wow that like wow, you're working with all this like cutting edge technology. Usually, that shouldn't be justification for what I'm doing is good for the world. And that doesn't mean that like service members are bad people. Part of it is that it's like service members are largely like liberal minded people who, and the great success of the military is that the U.S. military is that it's a volunteer force, and it's very, very inclusive, and and it's a mix of people from all over the United States. So ironically, our military organizations, in my opinion, are kind of like some of the more progressive institutions in the United States. As weird as that might sound, they're more integrated. They have, I trust military police a lot more than I would trust police, because you have the military system of law, the UCMJ, which is the law for as applied to military members, which is a lot more strict than civilian law. Civilian law for them, except that they're integrated into the systems that actually prosecute criminals, so they can and do, as we all know, corrupt these systems actively. It's okay to question uh what is advertised as like brave and courageous, um because it's like if we apply that to US troops, and we're just looking at things in material terms, well, who was braver, let's say like during the invasion of Fallujah, who was the more courageous? The U.S. service members who, yeah, they had to kick down doors, and a lot of them got shot up and blown up and whatever. But they're paid to be there. Um, Again, not downplaying it, but it's like look at who actually. It's a bad situation for everybody, but look at like who is more courageous here. These troops who are kicking down doors, and they're backed up by the world's biggest military. They have airstrikes. They have um, all this armor support, all of this stuff, and and they're just steamrolling stuff. Are they the brave ones, or is it like the teenagers who are the last line of defense? After uh, after the infrastructure of their hometown has been completely bombed out, and their families have been cooked in basements, and they're not getting paid for anything. They're just defending against invaders. Um, who's more courageous in that situation? Who can, because in my mind, courage is is when you don't have any guarantee, when there's no guarantee of a future at all, yet you persist. We can acknowledge the trauma that our troops are pressed into because of those very political aims, for being put in a bad situation, where where you're shot at, or you need to shoot somebody or something like that. It's entirely besides the point whether you're brave or courageous or whatever, because to the world at large, courage means nothing. It's nothing. Um, you don't count on like populations of people to be courageous. You ensure their success. Like, you feed them. You don't expect them to be like brave enough to endure a famine, without taking their own lives or something. You don't like courage has no statistical value. It's nonsense. It's used for propaganda, and it doesn't make you right or wrong. You can be a Nazi. You can be a courageous Nazi. Uh, it doesn't make what you do good. A lot of people who deployed over to like Iraq and Afghanistan and worked with the local forces there, they'll often a lot of them will praise the local forces, whatever. But then, like a lot of people will disparage the locals for not seeming really like committed and whatever, and um, and often talking about that kind of thing in racist terms as well, but without understanding the actual, or like really internalizing the context of their situation, or empathizing with that, because if I guarantee you, all of those guys, you know, would not be there in Afghanistan, even in Iraq or whatever, if they didn't get the free education, the free health care, or it's not free because, if our troops didn't have all that stuff, then there's no way in hell they would be over there doing that. Okay? Our guys and gals were not over there in Iraq and Afghanistan just because they were brave, because they had reasons to be there. There was because it was their job, and because they were relatively, compared to like their counterparts, they were relatively well taken care of, well paid, and had a place to go back to. You think, what would you do if like if you had no money coming your way, or very little money coming your way? Like, if would you take up arms against a well-funded uh conglomerate of terrorist groups, that's funded by like Saudi money? Would you take up arms against them? They're like sawing off people's heads and stuff. Risk your life, so for what? So you could be brave? What about your family? Your family has to eat. Most people in any situation, they're going to find a way for their family to eat. That's just the basic bottom line of things. And so when you have like a very corrupt military infrastructure, and corruption that's incentivized by the US government and US military, then yeah, you're not going to have like the best troops in the world, you know, in a war-torn country. And so anybody's experience as a U.S. military veteran, yeah, I'm sorry, it doesn't compare in the hardship. Not saying it's not hard, but it does not compare in the hardship of like their counterparts over there, or anybody living over there. It's like people talk about going to a war zone, blah blah blah, but you got to come back. So in short, the entire point of the U.S. military is not to safeguard our freedoms, which are not under assault from people on the other side of the world. It's to safeguard the um, opportunity, the opportunities and the freedoms of U.S. corporations, and everybody who suckles at that teat. Yeah, don't get it twisted. That is what American blood is spilled for. That is what the blood of many other peoples are spilled for, and that's why we have Americans who came back after inhaling stuff from the burn pits. They come back to get cancer and die a few years later, or suffering debilitating neurological injuries. That's what they're sacrificing for, not for us. It's for them, for corporations, for other people to get rich.